So we are going to be talking about the AmeriCorp VISTA program here at the Ohio Association of Food Banks. So the purpose of this webinar is to kind of just give you an introduction to the program, some basics about the benefits, the restrictions, types of projects that VISTA members can do, and then go from there. So, okay. Here we go. Okay, so first, just kind of a basic background of what is AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is a federal program. It's often considered or referred to as a domesticated version of the Peace Corps. There are a couple of different branches that we're going to go through of different types of service that folks can enroll in, but it is a federal entity. It is appropriated through Congress every year, and then granted out to agencies like ours. So a lot of you might be wondering about, the current federal situation with AmeriCorps. So right now they are in a continuing resolution, like most federal programs. So they're operating at, the same level of funding that they've had for the past few years. There have been some additional hiccups this year with DOGE and, various federal funding issues, but we have our current grant through basically 2027. So we should be okay unless anything crazy happens, but we do fortunately have our grant funding already allocated. So we're very pleased with that. Okay, so when people refer to AmeriCorps, they could be referring to multiple different programs within the umbrella that is the AmeriCorps agency. So there's essentially 4 branches of AmeriCorps service that folks can sign up to serve with. There's state and national, which is focused more on direct service activities, things like packing meal boxes, tutoring children, building homes, like Habitat for Humanity. So those members are enrolling for more hands-on direct community service work. And then there's NCCC, which stands for National Conservation Civilian Corps. And that is specifically for folks that are 17 to 24 years old and want to engage in disaster response and specialized projects. So they are more, they do a lot of disaster response, but they also do kind of like trail building and more outdoorsy, I would say. And they kind of travel around their little region doing various projects throughout their service term. And their senior corps, which is for folks 55 years and older looking to engage in volunteer opportunities. So those are mostly unpaid, kind of, if you're familiar with like any RSVP programs, those are under the senior corps umbrella. And then lastly is VISTA, which is the program we're talking about today, which stands for Volunteers in Service to America. And they are specifically working on indirect service activities such as fund development, volunteer recruitment, and program implementation. So VISTA is actually the oldest branch of AmeriCorps. It was started back in the 60s with President Johnson's War on Poverty. And then it was incorporated into the AmeriCorps umbrella when that was started in the 90s. So it has a lot of its own kind of unique rules if in that regard, is that it was established prior to AmeriCorps and adheres to a lot of different congressional statutes from when it was first started. So AmeriCorps VISTA members engage in a full year of service to strengthen organizations that eliminate or alleviate poverty through mobilization of community volunteers and resources. So the VISTA projects are known for establishing systems, developing partnerships in the community, generating resources, fund development, volunteer recruitment, retention and management. But essentially all of the projects have to be working within the low-income community. And the main pillar of VISTA is that it is working towards poverty alleviation, which is obviously a very lofty goal, and we don't expect any of your organizations or projects to cure poverty or anything like that, but they do need to be working on impacting and lessening the effects of poverty in their community. So with that, there's about 4 key principles we like to highlight for what makes a VISTA project a good fit for VISTA. The first, we kind of talked about alleviating poverty. So all programs and projects need to be working, again, within the low-income community. If you're an agency that is not specifically, like we do partner with folks that are not nonprofits, universities, things like that, that the your services don't solely work with the low-income community, that is fine. That is not a bar against being a host Vista host site, but your member needs to be working within the low-income community population that you would be serving. Another key principle is empowering communities. So what Vista strives to do is to engage residents of the community that you're going to be impacting on development of the project. So that can be done through a community needs assessment, feedback surveys. We really want to stress the collaboration between community and project. Another key principle is building capacity. So Vista members need to be working with staff and volunteers to strengthen projects, not directly with neighbors typically. So again, that goes back to Vista being the indirect service behind the scenes type of project as opposed to the state and national, which is more direct service. So your members should not typically be regularly working directly with neighbors. They should be doing more capacity building behind the scenes. Which will lead to the fourth principle, which is sustainable solutions. So what the Vista Project would like to see is that what the members' activities are doing and what they're leaving in place will exist after they're gone. So the idea is not to have a Vista member doing this project indefinitely, but to create systems, establish policies and procedures so that it can be handed off to a volunteer, to a staff member, once the project is concluded, and that these efforts can be felt long after the Vista member service has ended. So who can serve with Vista? There's a couple of things that are mandated by the AmeriCorp program. So they have to be 18 years or older. They have to have a high school diploma or GED. They need to pass a criminal history review. That does not mean they cannot have any criminal history. There's only two things that automatically bar them from Vista service, which is a murder conviction and being on the sex offender registry. So if either of those things are applicable, they cannot serve based on Vista's rules. Outside of that, it is up for review, and they typically approve any criminal history as long as the site attests that they're aware and are fine with that. But you are welcome to have any additional restrictions if that is a policy of your agency. They have to be a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident alien, or have DACA status. And then again, sites can make any additional requirements. So if it's a policy for you guys to not have any criminal history, you can implement that. If you are looking for somebody that has reliable transportation, you can implement that. So those are all additional things that you guys can add on to, but these are just the Vista minimum requirements. So who typically serves with Vista? I would say the majority of our cohort tends to be recent college graduates, retirees, or people transitioning to a new stage of life. So this is really seen as like a stepping stone to whatever your next adventure is. But I would say the majority of AmeriCorp VISTA members are probably fresh out of college, looking to gain some experience, looking to get their foot in the door and things like that. But we do have a lot of folks that again, are in that retiree category that are not quite ready to retire, would like to still be involved in their community, or folks that are just looking to transition to, nonprofit work or, pivot their career. So what can a member do for your organization? These are typical, I would say, hallmark VISTA activities that members do. So recruiting, training, and coordinating volunteers is a big one. Community needs assessments, so going out. So that would be an instance where a member would be doing more neighbor-facing activities. It's more than allowable to have them interviewing neighbors or folks that you're serving and kind of administer these surveys or needs assessments. So that's acceptable, VISTA activities. Creating new programming or enhancing existing programming. So if your agency's always wanted to start a composting initiative, the member can spearhead that initiative and getting everything off the ground for that. Leveraging resources is a big one, grant writing, fundraising, soliciting donations, things of that nature. Designing and implementing databases for tracking donors or volunteers. Community awareness, so things like tabling events, community outreach, social media campaigns, creating graphics, flyers, going to outreach events, and even going door to door, setting out flyers, things like that. And then partnership building, establishing additional partnerships in the community, being a part of community boards or engaging with various community meetings that happen in your guys' area and establishing partnerships and some kind of cross collaboration. So what VISTA members cannot do, just as equally important. So the main thing is, well, there's a lot of main things, but the first thing is staff and volunteer displacement. So what AmeriCorps doesn't want is they don't want somebody to lay off an employee or have an employee quit and then they don't fill that position because they're going to have essentially free labor of an AmeriCorps VISTA member sliding in to do that work. So they don't want to see, staff positions or regular volunteer positions shift to a VISTA worker. That's not a good look for the program. That's not how the program's designed. So if, you already have a volunteer manager at your organization, but you're looking to have somebody come in and like supplement their work and kind of expand their capacity, that is allowable. So they can like aid an additional staff member in bolstering their work, expanding their scope, but they should not be replacing any regular staff positions or anything like that. They should not be supervising any employees. They are not technically going to be an employee of your organization. They're more of like a shared internship, so they should not be responsible for supervising employees. VISTA members have to adhere to the Hatch Act like all other federal employees. So that means that they cannot engage in any political or religious advocacy. And sometimes that does come up. So like if you're a religious-based organization, that's not an issue. They just can't be like leading prayer or anything, proselytization while in service or anything like that. But they are certainly welcome to be stationed at a faith-based organization. The political advocacy, and a lot of our organizations do political advocacy, and so that can be a little bit challenging, like, get out the vote, support, this bill, we need to fund Congress now. The VISTA member would need to stay away from all that type of activities. They can aid in education. So if you're having like a congressional visit or anything like that, and they create like a fact sheet about a program that you're operating, that's then going to be used at the congressional visit, that would be fine. But they cannot be like the one saying, please vote for this, please support this. They just kind of need to steer clear of all that kind of things. They also cannot be solely responsible for mobilizing financial or material support for the host site. So while they can aid in fund development and things like that, they shouldn't be responsible for like overall operation expenses and gaining funds for that. And then direct service is a big one, which we have a whole nother slide about, but they should not be engaged in regular direct service, which I would say is probably the biggest challenge that most of our sites face. Okay, so here are some examples of indirect service activities. A lot of that is what I kind of already talked about on the slide about what a VISTA member can do for your organization. So I'm not going to repeat those, but I would say some direct service examples that are common: serving meals, stocking food pantry shelves, mentoring students or community members, teaching financial literacy courses. So really, again, their neighbor interaction should be limited to specific activities. They shouldn't be doing regular direct service with neighbors, regular manual labor with like maintaining warehouses, things like that. So I'd say this is the biggest pitfall to watch out for. So now I kind of want to talk a little bit about like who I am, why OAF is involved in this, and how we would fit into the structure if you were to become a host site. So if you're not familiar, the Ohio Association of Food Banks is Ohio's largest charitable response to hunger. And our mission is to support our 12 Feeding America food banks in providing food and other resources to people in need. So that is our coverage map of all 12 of our food banks and what counties they cover. I am physically located in Franklin County in Columbus. We are not a food bank ourselves. We're an administrative office. And so we don't have any direct service programming or activities here. We're just like a small 20-person office. A lot of people confuse us with Mid-Ohio Food Collective, which is the actual food bank that serves Franklin County, but we are not a direct service site. So what we do as an organization, the main thing we do is purchase food for our food bank partners. So we have two programs. We have the Ohio Food Program, which is more of our shelf stable, and we have our Agriculture Clearance Program, which is produce, meat, dairy, things like that. So we account for about 25% of all the food at the food banks through purchasing. So we get money directly from the state budget to do that purchasing. And Ohio's actually a unique state in that regard that gets state funding for food purchasing. So that's the main thing we do is we buy food in bulk for our member agencies. And then we also have a SNAP outreach and advocacy team, and that's also mostly stationed at our food banks, but we kind of operate that from a state level. So if you have anybody your members or anybody you know that needs help enrolling in SNAP, we have some assisters out there. And then we also have a health insurance outreach and enrollment program. So that is our Navigator grant that, although has been significantly diminished this past year, is still operating in the state. So we help folks enroll in Medicaid and marketplace plans and do education in the Affordable Care Act. And then lastly, our national service program. So our VISTA program is kind of like our bread and butter. We have about 45 or so slots to grant out every year. But we also just started a direct state and national program. We have about 11 members serving at our food banks throughout the state doing direct service. But that one is a little bit smaller in scope. But our VISTA program, we've been operating since 2006, and we are just great partners with AmeriCorp in that regard, and we have one of the largest statewide programs in the country. So ShareCorp is just our branded name for our AmeriCorp VISTA program. They ask you to pick a name essentially. It is not like different than AmeriCorp or, something different than other VISTA programs. It's just our branded name. We are the ShareCorp program here in Ohio. And so we operate on what's called an intermediary model with the federal government. So it can be challenging for them to partner out with individual nonprofits that want VISTA resources. So they like finding intermediary type models such as ourselves that have a statewide reach that can kind of do that granting for them and make things a little bit less red tape for them and for you because we handle it as a whole. So we apply directly to the federal government, federal funder for our AmeriCorp funding. So like I said, about 45 slots, they grant us that money. And then we do our host site RFP to partner and parcel out those 45 slots throughout the state. So because we've been around for a while, we're a large intermediary model, we're really kind of broad in our scope of what types of projects we can take on. It is not just food-based. We are open to all types of projects as long as they fit the bill of working within the low-income community, working towards alleviating poverty. So because of that, we're kind of in two focus areas, healthy futures, which is fairly broad on its own, but mostly where a lot of our food insecurity and access positions lie. But then our capacity building focus area really allows us to have those broad reaches. So we've done financial education projects, we've done COVID response, we've done education, like secondary education promotion. So we have a large scope. I would say the majority of our projects are food access and insecurity focused, but if that is not exactly what your project is, that does not mean that this is not the right fit for you, as long as it, again, adheres to the poverty alleviation model. So again, just kind of like the structure. So AmeriCorp is the federal funder. They are broken down into regional offices. So we're part of the Midwest region. So they're all remote anyways, but if they had a physical office, I guess it might be here. But we partner with them, the federal entity, for getting our funding and doing like our reporting and all the fun government things that you have to do for grant writing. And then we are the state level intermediary. We provide AmeriCorp resources to local host sites and within the Ohio communities, and extra support to VISTA members throughout their term. And then you as the host site would be the daily support and base to complete the project. So that is kind of the structure. You won't really be working with AmeriCorp directly. That is what we're for. But, I guess if they ever came a calling, they could. Okay, so now we're going to go off what are the expectations of us as a sponsor and you as a host site. So what we would provide as the sponsor is initial ongoing training and technical assistance to host sites. So that would be things like supervisor training to make sure that you're prepared to supervise a VISTA member and all the rules and fun things that come with that. Trainings like these, kind of like what VISTA is, what the regulations are, what the benefits are, and just any trainings throughout the year. We provide a lot of technical support throughout the year on various trainings and regulations. We assist with VISTA member recruitment. So we are not solely responsible for VISTA member recruitment. We are not going to pick somebody and just place them at your site. You would be involved fully in that process and would need to recruit and interview and sign off on somebody that's joining your organization. But we assist in that. So I think I have another slide that goes through that in a little bit more detail. Or that might be on my next webinar actually, but essentially we help promote the position. We do a pre-screening call with them to go over all the VISTA side of things that would bar them from service, go over their pay, benefits, things like that. And then we'd send them on to you for final interview and review. And then you guys, would talk to them more about the day-to-day, what their project's going to be, things like that. We provide tools for host site reporting, such as there's going to be a biweekly timesheet that members need to complete and a monthly report of their activities. So we provide all of those tools, train the members on those tools, train you guys on what it means to review them and submit them for review. We do compliance monitoring, so things like we do host site visits where we come out and talk with you and the member about how the year is going, make sure everything's compliant, questions, things like that. And then we do all of the required reporting on grant metrics and things like that through the monthly report that we collect. And then lastly, we provide the majority of fiscal support for the member. So we would be paying the member directly. That would not be a burden on the host sites. We provide all the payroll side of things. The expectations of you as a host site are to provide daily supervision of the member. So obviously that's a big commitment, and making sure that you're selecting a supervisor that has the time to do that and has the ability to support the member throughout their year is really important for having a successful year. You will also be a part of the compliance monitoring. So, we're based in Columbus. We're not going to be physically at your host site to attest that this member was there, that they worked these hours, they completed these tasks. So we really rely on our host site supervisors when they sign off on the timesheets, when they sign off on the monthly reports. That is part of our compliance check, and we are entrusting that the host sites are adhering to, the compliance. Like this person did show up and work, this person did complete these tasks, and they are engaging in appropriate activities. So they're not doing direct service, they're not going completely outside the scope of their work and just kind of filling in wherever the organization needs. They are sticking to their project that has been approved by the funder as a appropriate VISTA project. We expect you to ensure the member is integrated into the agency. So what happens a lot is that people, have a VISTA member that comes in oh, they're just a VISTA member, they're an intern, they can do whatever, and that the other staff members aren't fully educated on what their role is. So they tend to ask them to do inappropriate activities, which puts it awkward on the member. Or, they kind of devalue them by saying, they can just do whatever, they're here to help. So just making sure that the staff is aware of what their role is, what their project is, what they're allowed to be engaging in is really important for a successful year. Recruitment of the member. So again, we will help with this, but local recruitment is a must. So efforts in that regard need to be kind of planned and thought through. Because, sometimes we get random applicants that are just looking to do AmeriCorp service. They found the position and applied, but most of the time, the most successful recruitment comes from local recruitment. So promoting it within your network, pushing it out in your socials, talking. What we find is word of mouth is typically the best recruitment tool we have. So just making sure everybody in your network knows that you guys are looking for this position and looking to fill the role. So we talked about staff and volunteer displacement previously. If you have a dedicated volunteer or somebody that volunteers occasionally, you can certainly promote the position with them. It doesn't mean like you're taking away their role. We have a lot of folks that recruit from within their volunteer pool. So just know that that's not unallowable. If you have a current dedicated volunteer that would like to pivot to a specialized role, that is great. And then lastly, adhere to the host site agreement. So that will be sent out for you to sign once you recruit a member and they're ready to start, and kind of just details all the nitty-gritty stuff of a MOU. But you will have time to review that before signing. Okay, so how much will this cost my organization? An important question. First is that we operate what's called a cost share model. So we have a required, match and additional expenses to operate the program. And so how we do that is we split that cost amongst the host sites. And so these costs go towards some of our member living stipends, some additional program benefits. So we just kind of spread that out. So for this program year, the cost share model for one member is going to be $2,200. And then if you request more than one member, it would be $2,700 for the additional member per organization. So that will be a one-time fee, and that will only be administered once you find and recruit the member. So I would say, I have a timeline slide later, but say the member starts in the summer, that is when you'd pay that fee. So if you don't end up finding the right fit, you would not be charged that fee. And it's not like an ongoing fee every month. That's just a one-time fee for a full-time person for the year. Time. So again, time in recruiting, onboarding, training, and general supervision. So I would plan the majority of your time obviously being for the recruitment and onboarding. When you're, orienting a new person to your organization, obviously takes a bit more time. So that would be like spring, early summer. And then just additional supervision throughout the year. Project supplies. So you would need to provide them with any supplies needed to successfully complete their project, a computer, phone access, whatever would be needed for them to be successful. And then any project related travel. So if you cover, multiple counties for your organization and you expect the member to travel to events outside the county, you would be responsible for reimbursing them based on your company policy. So if your policy is that, you guys reimburse at 50 cents a mile, they would adhere to that policy as well. Other than that, the only fiscal part of that is the cost share model fee. So I just want to briefly go over like what the VISTA benefits are, why somebody would do service, so if like this seems feasible to anybody. So it is full-time work, and that is determined based on what full-time is at your site. So if full-time at your site is 35 hours, that would be what the AmeriCorp member adheres to as well. If it's 40, they would adhere to 40. If you don't have like a set rule about that, they do have to do a minimum of 35. So that is the lowest that we can go to be considered full-time. And that is what they would be have to adhere to throughout their term. We also offer professional development. So we have a $100 fund per member per year for them to request to do additional professional development. Like if they want to attend a conference, a training that costs a little bit of money. I've had people use it for like GRE prep courses or CPR certification. So it doesn't have to be project specific. It's just to help kind of bolster retention in the program and offer additional benefits. And we also do various trainings throughout the year. We bring them together as a cohort and do like speaker trainings and things like that. And then we offer a lot of stuff throughout the year virtually. So we really lean into selling this program as a career builder, a career next step, because obviously it's not a very lucrative job. So we really have to build in other benefits to sell the program. They will be given a biweekly living stipend, which is currently set at $957.46, and that is gross. So that is essentially their biweekly pay, their paycheck. It's a stipend, so it's kind of complicated, doesn't adhere to all the typical payroll taxes. They only get federal taxes removed. They're never responsible for like FICA or anything, or Medicare and Medicaid and things like that. Or sorry, Medicare and Social Security taxes. But that will be their biweekly stipend. And then upon successful completion of their service term, they are given an option to select one of two awards. So the cash stipend, which is essentially like an end of year bonus, and that's $1,800, and that would just be given to them on their last paycheck, again, like a cash bonus, or the education award, which is currently valued at $7,395. And that can be used towards any federal student loan repayments or tuition if they are looking to go back to school. So those are the two options that they can pick from. And then if they have federal student loans, they can put those into deferment while they're serving, which has not been a very popular benefit these past few years when loans haven't been being paid on, but I believe that has started back up or is starting back up. So perhaps more of a draw for people, but they can put their loans into deferment while they're serving, meaning they do not have to pay on them. And then any interest accrued while serving would be paid off for by AmeriCorp. There's also a health benefit. There's two options. There's like a HSA plan essentially. So it would be a supplement to them having some other type of primary insurance, which I would say is more common, especially with the younger AmeriCorp members that can still be on their parents' plan. So essentially it's kind of like an HSA account to supplement that. But if they don't have that, there's also like a catastrophic coverage plan that is available to them, but does not meet like ACA standards of like preventative care. There's paid time off. They get 10 sick days and 10 vacation days for the year, so pretty ample for 1 year. About essentially 4 weeks of PTO, and any holidays that your site is closed and recognizes, they would get those as paid holidays as well. And then there's also a relocation allowance. So I would say most of our members are local and are, going to be pulled from your own community, but some members do like to relocate for service. It's exactly 1 year. Time of a lease, it's a great chance to travel and, experience a different city. So if you are have a candidate that is relocating more than 50 miles for service, they are eligible for a modest relocation allowance. I think it's like $750 to kind of help get them settled and, in the moving costs. So those are the regular VISTA benefits. So we have some additional benefits in our program, and I would say the main highlight is that we provide a $200 a month housing stipend. And this is specific for us at OAF and our program. This is not a universal AmeriCorp benefit. This is something that we budgeted for, that we use our cost share fee for, and other fundraising streams. So we found that, with housing costs and everything, we wanted to make this program as accessible to folks as possible, and not just people that, could afford to live with their parents or something like that. So we adopted a housing stipend, I think back in 2022, and it's been, very beneficial and helpful in member retention. So I handle that myself. So they submit receipts to me and I just reimburse them for their rent and housing costs. So it's been great and members really appreciate it. So that is something that we offer. I already talked about the professional development fund, but that is again on this slide. Additional support from our team and larger program network. So I'm an AmeriCorp VISTA alum of this program. I served at the Toledo Food Bank back in 2009. And my program manager, Carrie, also was a ShareCorps member in our program back in 2020. So we have a ton of just experience and knowledge and history of AmeriCorp VISTA service, and we've offered support for our members throughout the years, and not only benefits and trainings and things like that, but just, navigating service, ups and downs, navigating site dynamics, and help being like a listening ear and sounding board for host sites and members, just to work through the year of any kinks and issues. So we provide a lot of support to our members, and we're really proud of that. And then you can provide additional benefits. So the main thing is you cannot provide direct cash payments to them. The VISTA program was designed to live amongst the people that you're serving, was kind of the initial thought on the program. So they designed the stipend to be at poverty levels so that folks serving within the program could, really empathize with the folks that they're serving with and understand the challenge that they're facing. It's not quite that immersion experience anymore, but that's still what the parameters that they're having us work in. So you cannot directly supplement their payments with cash or anything like that. You can reimburse them for living expenses like our housing stipend does. So if you want to, some folks have them use their personal phone as like their professional phone and reimburse them for their phone bill or what have you. There are some things you can do there, but you can't just give them like regular cash. The occasional gas or grocery gift card would be great, appreciated. But really just kind of being creative with the benefits that you can offer to make this, sustainable for people to be able to serve. So, monthly lunches. People have gotten creative in this, but any benefits that we can give to employees for retention and morale is obviously encouraged and appreciated. So I just wanted to put up a supervisor testimonial of kind of just like an end of year, like what the member did for her host site and just to kind of show you like what you could expect maybe from your year. Obviously, every position is different, but it's just nice to hear from an actual supervisor about what the VISTA member contributed to their organization. So this supervisor said during her term of service, VISTA member served as a vital part of the pantry team, working closely with the pantry manager to enhance food access and operational efficiency. Her primary duties included organizing inventory systems, helping streamline client intake, and supporting data tracking efforts to ensure accurate reporting of services provided. She played a key role in improving food distribution processes, designing a more efficient layout, creating signage, and assisting in the development of systems to reduce waste and improve client flow. So I just thought that quote perfectly encapsulated like appropriate VISTA activities, how it can, be translated into actual outcomes at your organization and what a member could, do during their year. All right, so this is my last slide. Next steps. So next week on Tuesday, I believe at 2:00, I have an application technical assistance workshop. So that will be going through the actual RFP application, all the different components, what makes a strong application, what we're looking for with each section. So if you're looking to have just some more insight into the application process, please feel free to attend that. Same, you should find the Zoom link where you found this one. And then applications are due on January 9th. They need to be emailed back to me. Please read the RFP instructions very carefully. I know like a lot of folks have trouble with the document not saving. So I know if you open the fillable PDF and don't save it first to your computer, people lose their information. So make sure you do that. And another thing I want to stress is that I will confirm receipt of your application. So if you don't hear back like an email from me saying received, I would check because sometimes things get lost in spam. I try to check that, regularly during this time, but just I will confirm that I've received your application. We will review the applications and provide notifications sometime in February. We will begin recruitment in March, and the members should begin service in summer. So we typically have like 1 to 2 start dates per month in the summer. Like there's one normally in May, there's normally 1 or 2 in June, then 1 or 2 in July, and like 1 or 2 in August, depending on how AmeriCorp does it. But there's specific dates that members can start. They can't just start whenever. But so we try to get folks enrolled in specific dates, but we do have like a rolling recruitment during that time. So if you look to have somebody start in June and you don't end up finding anybody and you do find somebody in July or August, like that's fine. We have a rolling recruitment system here. And yeah, that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then open it up to any questions people have. And if you do not have any questions, feel free to log off. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions about the application but can't attend the webinar, I'm going to record that one, or I'm happy to talk offline at any time and answer any questions you have.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Allison Gerwe from Cincinnati, Ohio, with your store of the Queen City.
Hi.
Hi, I have a question. So we have a number of employees that might actually qualify for the AmeriCorps VISTA program, can you use current employees to as the AmeriCorps VISTA volunteer?
So that would
You
be
understand what I'm saying?
so that would be like a couple things. That would be more in the staff displacement category. Like if they quit their job, their paid job through you to be paid by AmeriCorps Federal Resources,
Yeah,
that's frowned upon. If they are looking
exactly.
to have the role and also be like a part-time employee, that's also unfortunately frowned upon. They can have part-time employment work, but it cannot be through the organization because that just gets messy.
Yes.
So I guess
Okay.
essentially no.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate
Mhm.
it.